So again, I read the New York Times story where Cornell Brooks said he was blindsided by this decision. But I talked to a board member over the weekend who said he's known since last year his contract likely was not going to be renewed. He's been president and CEO for 3 years. Why did the board decide on Friday it was time to move in a new direction? What caused this?
Well, the executive committee of the national board has been looking at its situation for a little over a year, examining where we are, what we need to do. One of our basic concerns is that our units at the local level, we believe, have not been getting the attention that they needed to get. If you think about it, Roland, it's not Baltimore that makes a difference in the communities across the country. It's the local branches, the people who are impacted by policies and programs that disparately affect their lives. And we're looking to place more emphasis on those particular entities. We want our branches, our youth councils, and our college chapters to be better able to handle situations at the local level because, quite frankly, they are the first point of contact. We can go in after a big incident and do protests or whatever, but our local units are on the ground. We need to have them be able to meet the challenges that their communities are facing before the tragedies occur.
Leon, I also understand, again, that look, there have been concerns with Cornell Brooks' style of leadership. Also, there was a belief in many people that I've talked to over the past 18 months, they felt that he lacked the gravitas, the presence needed for the NAACP, that in many ways the NAACP had taken a back seat to other individuals and other organizations in terms of being in the forefront of the civil rights movement. Can you also speak to that?
Roland, there were places that Cornell brought great leadership. He could very well deliver our message on TV and the media. He could identify and can identify issues across the board. The question is, what do you do after you have raised the issue? How do you bring some solution to bear on the problems that
Leon, are you saying that, because I remember when he put together that march from Selma to D.C. dealing with voting rights, so are you saying that in his 3 years there was no one major win? There was no raising the issue, getting arrested, but there was no NAACP-led win by the organization. Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is, if you have a march from Selma to Washington, D.C., what you have to have identified before you began that march the end product that you're looking for. If you sit in a senator's office in their home state when the Congress has already convened and they're in Washington, D.C., what is your end game and how do you promote that? If you take all of that, if you sit in the chairman of the Judiciary Committee's office, then across the nation, shouldn't there have been other sit-ins in other members of the committee's offices to emphasize that you needed them to look at the policy that was being debated?
Right. Leon, obviously you also, last question here, about 30 seconds for you, you're also going to be under lots of pressure in terms of picking a new leader. And many say it's also time for the NAACP to have its first woman president and CEO. Your thoughts about that?
I think all of that is a good part of the discussion. We're going to take our time. We're not rushed. What we recognize is that we have leaders across the country who are going to propel the movement. I mean, if you think about the things that have actually been accomplished this year. Texas, North Carolina, those voter suppression cases that were that we prevailed in those states, those things were led by our state conference presidents. And so we still have that leadership there. Even though, for instance, in North Carolina, Reverend Barber has stepped away from the state conference presidency, he's still on the national board. He's still a major figure, for instance, in that state, and can help us lead that message in North Carolina. So we have our leadership. It's in place, and we think we can continue this fight, but we want to look forward and not backwards.
Got it. All right. Board Chair Leon Russell, the NAACP. We appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.
Joining us right now via Skype is Nakima Levy-Pounds, former head of the Minneapolis NAACP. Nakima, welcome back to News One Now.
How you doing, Roland?
Doing great. You are one of the millennial leaders of the NAACP on the local level. Your thoughts on this board decision not to renew the contract of Cornell Brooks as president and CEO?
Well, initially I was surprised that after only 3 years they made that decision. However, when I reflected upon my own experience with Cornell, I can understand why they would choose to go in a new direction. I mean, Cornell Brooks is a very smart man. You know, he's an attorney, and he grabbed the reins of the National NAACP at a very tumultuous time in our history. You know, right before we started to address officer-involved shootings around the nation after Mike Brown was killed in Ferguson. And so that's a very difficult time to take over the nation's largest and some would argue most illustrious civil rights organization. I always felt in working with him and seeing his leadership style that he was caught in between two worlds, the old guard, the old way of doing things versus what we're seeing from new school leadership. And I'm mostly referring to Black Lives Matter and young people who have their own brand of how to take on the system and how to shut things down to stand up for justice. So he was caught in between the two worlds. And I don't know if he was able to make the transition fast enough.
What do you think the NAACP needs in a president and CEO? You had Ben Jealous, who served for 5 years, Bruce Gordon for less than a year, now Cornell Brooks for 3 years. That means that the NAACP will be working on its fourth CEO in a decade.
Yes, that's very troubling on the one hand. But on the other hand, I see the adversity that the organization is encountering as an opportunity. Number one, they need to make sure that they have a board that is reflective of the age ranges of the people who are part of the NAACP. I went to the national convention in Pennsylvania. I think that's where we met a few years ago. And most of the board leadership seemed to be significantly older. And so it's going to be
funny.
difficult.
You actually over the weekend, you and I were, of course, tweeting back and forth, and you asked the question, how many board members are under 30? I said, no. How many board members are under 50?
Absolutely, and that's a valid question. It's going to be difficult if they want an energetic president, if they want someone who's going to think outside the box, who's going to not only understand strategy, how to push policy, how to push for legal changes against the Trump administration, but also someone who can engage in street level activism. And like the chairman said, to have a game plan. Their board is going to have to be comprised of a wide range of people and not just folks who've been connected to the organization for a very long time. That's going to be a difficult adjustment for them to make, because if they get a leader that represents really the 21st century civil rights battles, that leader is going to come under fire if they try, you know, some of the things that Black Lives Matter has done, for example. But I think definitely it's time for a woman. I mean, there's a lot of male chauvinism, unfortunately, within our civil rights organizations. I certainly encountered it, even with the law degree, even having been a law professor for 14 years. I had to deal with those things. So they're going to have to address that. They're going to have to reach out to young people. They're going to have to be strategic in how they communicate. And I would argue they're going to have to be charismatic. You want a leader who can move you towards action at the national level down to the local chapters.